everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in already. I'm like happy to see that it's like 21 people and we only started for 1 minute. Hope y'all are doing well. If you're unfamiliar with this Twitch stream or YouTube stream, wherever you're watching it from, this is called Open Source Friday. It's basically a time where we chat with an open source maintainer or core contributor about their project, and we learn more about like how we can get involved with their project or how we can get our own start into open source. For folks that are joining in right now or listening in, feel free to tell me where you're calling in from and maybe like your favorite programming language. I'm super excited about today's stream because I'm chatting with my friend, and I'm gonna go ahead and let them introduce themselves. Hello.
Hello, my name is Mayank. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a front-end developer. I like doing lots of CSS stuff and really into accessibility as well. And yeah, I just like doing web stuff in general. I've been doing like programming for like a decade now, and like web development specifically for like 7-8 years now. And yeah, today we'll be talking about like a library I made this year.
Cool. Awesome. I didn't know you've been programming for 10 years. I'm like a baby programmer. That's awesome. I see someone posted their favorite programming language. Thanks. Someone said Drupal. Awesome. Hey everyone. So tell us what your project is. What is it called? I don't want to introduce things for our guests, so I want you to be able to talk about your project in the way you want to. What is it called? What does it do? Yeah.
So it's called Ecsstatic. So that's with 2 S's because CSS has 2 S's. And yeah, it's a CSS-in-JS library.
Mhm.
And like it's fully static. So we'll go over what that means. And it's made specifically for Vite.
Okay.
And yeah, we'll kind of go over what all of that means. So don't worry if like none of that makes sense because it's like just words.
Awesome. Cool. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of comments again. Someone said they're from Nigeria and they love Python and Golang. Thanks for tuning in from Nigeria. And then someone said, hey, Rizal. Hey, Mayak. So, hey, back to you, Ezekiel. I hope I said your name right. What inspired you to create a CSS and JS library for Vite? Like, why were you like, yo, I'm about to make this today?
Well, it's kind of a difficult question because like I would prefer to not have made my own library. Like I would like to have used one that already exists.
Yeah.
But what I found was that like none of the ones that exist work well in Vite, and specifically in Astro, which uses Vite for SSR. And yeah, that's kind of why I'm like it started kind of as a joke. I was like, how hard can it be to make a CSS and JS library? And like this one night I was just like playing around with it and kind of got the proof of concept done in like 50 lines of code.
Wow.
And was like, okay, this is not that hard. But then like it just kind of evolved from there, and like started finding more and more edge cases to fix. And then yeah, I eventually kind of just open sourced it, and it seemed like people kind of agree with this idea that like such like at least the people that have used it, they kind of like that it's like so minimal, and like it's something like this. They had the same problems as me where it didn't work in Vite and Astro. So yeah.
Okay, perfect. So basically, you're like, I don't have a good optimal solution or I haven't found one that exists out there. And you're like, I'm gonna just make it. It can't be too hard. And you're like, it isn't. And then also, you said an acronym SSR. Can you explain that for folks? Tell us what the acronym is for folks who are watching and they don't know. Because I like to make sure that like no acronym.
Yeah. I guess let's start with Vite. Vite is a bundler, right? It bundles your code, like you write code in like, I don't know, TypeScript and like JSX.
Yeah.
It converts that to plain HTML, CSS, JavaScript files. And Astro uses Vite under the hood for um, SSR. I said. What that really means is like it kind of generates. Well, SSR is such a loaded term. I'm gonna try to.
I mean, you could say server-side rendering.
Right, it's server-side rendering, but like it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with server. So
Yeah,
what I really mean there is like not the client-side JavaScript. It's like it mostly happens at either build time or on the server. So
yeah.
the JavaScript like runs beforehand and like kind of generates the markup statically. That's what I mean.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for explaining. There's some comments that I'll highlight again. I want to make sure people feel, you know, like we're conversing with them. Shay said, pronounce it like a static and make the logo a snake. I like you. Well, we'll show you the logo if you haven't seen it, but I think it's cute. The one that, um,
Yeah, show them the logo.
yeah. But I guess when you pull up your demo, they'll see it. And then someone said they're from Argentina or they're watching from Argentina and they program with MERN stack. That's my stack too. Awesome. And someone else said V is cool. They prefer it over Webpack. I think
Yeah.
that's right. Cool. So my next question to you is, and I know these are like kind of hard questions to like break down like these little things, is just like, can you explain the value of CSS in JS for someone who's like, I don't see what's the big deal, or they're new to web development or something like that.
Right. So here I'm gonna say that it's not really CSS and JS, it's more like CSS and JSX. So JSX is like the um, templating language that React created. And what I found working in like all these frameworks is that like most frameworks kind of handle styling for you. Like they provide you a way to associate styles with the markup. For example, Svelte, you write your markup up top, and then inside a style tag, you just write the selectors, and they get connected automatically and scoped. You can't do that in React because React is like, I don't care how you write your CSS. And yeah, so that's kind of where CSS and JS comes in. It's like you want to be able to write CSS in JSX really, and like JSX doesn't have a easy way to do that. So we kind of need to create all these libraries in the ecosystem, and so that's CSS and JS, right? Now, why would you want that in the same file rather than in a different file? What I found is that when it's in a different file, like the best thing there is CSS modules, and yeah, that's like I found that that's the closest we can get, and like there's still problems there because like it's like not directly connected, so you can't like right click on a class name and like rename it, and like you might like change the class name in the CSS and like have no clue that it's not working because like you don't get like those linting errors and IntelliSense and all that.
That's true. Yeah, CSS is not going to be like, "Hey, you're missing this." It's just not going to work. For this person that commented, would you like to expand on what you're asking? Are you asking if Tailwind is CSS and JS, or just expand, because I know we both have strong feelings on Tailwind, and you don't want to get us started. So
I'll just say this: like Tailwind, most of the appeal for Tailwind comes from React and JSX not having an answer for styling. I feel like if they gave you a way to scope your styles inside JSX itself, then like Tailwind wouldn't be as popular.
True, true. Cool. I think that's a good point. Someone said repo link, please. Give us a second. We will post it. I want to just go through the demo and stuff like that, because sometimes first off, I can't put links in our chat, and then when I put a banner over it, I don't want to cover up when they do the demo. My last question before the demo is, why is this concept relevant in 2023? Should we be moving on
Right.
to something else?
So if you ask people, they'll be like, CSS and JS sucks. It's like, it's not really what you want to be using in 2023.
Yeah.
But like most of them, I think, are talking about runtime CSS and JS, where you write the CSS in JavaScript, but like it gets sent to the actual user's browser. Like it runs in the browser, and like it's slow and bad for performance, and like you should just be generating CSS files and shipping that instead.
Yeah.
So that, I think, is why this library is relevant. Like we want the DX benefits that we have seen from CSS and JS for years now, but we also want the UX benefits of static CSS files.
That makes sense. Thank you. All right. Let's get into the demo. Let's see what this is. Actually, your screen is already shared. Oh, hey. Hey, the stupid learner. They always watch every single Twitch stream, so just wanted to shout them out. All right, so let's see the demo of Ecstatic. Or I feel like I'm saying it wrong, but
Ecstatic, it's just like the word with an extra S.
also, that's the logo for the person that was saying maybe it should be a snake. I do like this demo too, but I like the snake idea with the. But yeah, go ahead. Get into the demo. Oh,
Yeah, so the name, I guess, is just CSS and then static.
It's just me not being able to pronounce things. I just be like overthinking. Also, hey to Dan for tuning in.
Oh, hi. I know that person.
I know,
So
right?
so let me just kind of scroll through this website,
Yeah.
and because there's some samples here, code samples that will kind of make sense. So like a lot of CSS and JS libraries, they give you like all these APIs to do all kinds of things. Ecstatic is like minimal by design. Like all it does is like you write some I don't know, properties, and like you just make style rules and assign them to a variable, and this will get replaced by a class name that is like scoped. So it looks like gibberish, but that's fine. It's like the compile output. You're not really going to be worrying about this. And oh yeah, I guess I forgot to mention this part. So one of the problems I faced with other CSS and JS libraries that I tried before was they don't support the entirety of CSS. Like CSS has added so many new features and keeps adding new features. I found that those don't fully work in other libraries. So for example, I'm using cascade layers here. I'm using container queries here.
Someone said they would like you to zoom in. They can't see. Sorry.
Okay, zoomed in. Yeah, so I'm using cascade layers, container queries, and like all sorts of new CSS features that will be added will like just work here. And like you can kind of copy this, like maybe you saw a code pen that you really liked. You can copy that CSS directly in here and it will work out of the box. And maybe let's say you're switching off React to a Svelte or something. You can copy this back in the Svelte and that will also continue to work. That I feel is like really important. Like you should have no lock-in with your project.
Yeah.
And Sass, I really like Sass. So this just supports Sass, like, because why not?
Yeah.
So you can write CSS, but you can also write Sass right inside your JavaScript, which is kind of
That's dope.
yeah, because like JavaScript is cool, but like Sass is like mature and it's like really like it has proven that it can do CSS stuff better.
Also,
And
sorry that I keep asking you to zoom in, but more people are asking you to zoom in. But some people also said they love container queries. But yeah, there's like 2 people that are like, hey, please zoom in a little bit more. It might seem
okay,
like
well,
on your side, but
well, this is just a website. You can scroll in your own time. Like
yeah. Let me
this is
pull up.
not the actual demo. When I do the demo, I'll zoom in all the way, 500%. So you want to get in the demo now?
Yeah, let's do it. And I'll put the website up for folks to see if they wanted to check it out. Yeah, I think it's dope that you made sure that it could work for the newer CSS CSS like features rather than it just only supporting like a limited set of features. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and that I found is kind of hard to do unless you use the CSS syntax itself.
Yeah.
So like some of the CSS and JS libraries, they use JavaScript objects instead of a string literal. And when you do that, you kind of have to recreate everything from CSS in your JavaScript objects. And Tailwind kind of also has this problem. Like it has to like when new features come out, you have to kind of wait for Tailwind to support them. I think like when you just let people write CSS, you can kind of support everything even 20 years from now, and it will just work.
Yeah, that way each time they come out with something new, you're not like, oh, now I have to catch up and get that. Also, Nate is here. He said, hey. So yeah.
All right, so let's get into it. I'll start with like a plain Astro file. Basically, it's HTML if you really think about it. So but let's start with what you do in Astro. So let's style this H1. Let's make it, I don't know, italic. And yeah, let's inspect this. This is kind of tiny.
Oh yeah,
I've zoomed in 500%.
it seems ridiculous on your side, but actually it's very helpful. Okay, and that's where it generated that that string that you said that will look like nonsense.
Yeah,
But
so this is just Astro, right? Like
yeah.
I haven't like I'm showing how Astro works. So like this to me makes sense. Like you write the markup and you just style the markup right there. And this is plain CSS. All I really wanted Astro to do is kind of make sure that these two are connected directly. So I can also do like class foo, and I can do foo here as well. And like Astro is just making sure that this foo, so here you can see it's like adding this scoped hashed class name. So that if I define foo in a different file, it's not going to conflict. That's scoping. But now let's go ahead and add a button. And let's do this in the class.
Cool.
So this works so far, right? But like as I was working in lots of Astro projects, I found that like a lot of times I want to like add interactivity, and for that I'll pull in Preact or sometimes React.
Yeah.
And what that means is I need to move my markup from an Astro file into a JSX file. So let's do that.
Okay.
I'll just copy this thing. But now where do I put my styles? I would probably have to make like a separate style sheet. Yeah. But wouldn't it be nice if I could just put it in the same file? So that's where Ecstatic comes in.
Let's see it.
That's how you import it. You also have to set it up in your config.
Thanks.
There's Not getting autocomplete for some reason. Just gonna copy the what I have in one of the starter templates, because
Okay.
like I usually rely on autocomplete here.
As any engineer.
I think it's just plugins, and then I need to import copy from here. Let's see.
Perfect.
This is the Vite template. So, like I said, Astro uses Vite under the hood, so we need to give it in this Vite plugins. Whereas if we were using Vite directly, well, I was missing the comma. That's why there was no autocomplete. Okay, now it's all set up. So you just add it in your Vite. Whereas if you're using Vite directly, you add it directly in plugins.
Okay.
So yeah, now it's set up. Now we can go back. And so this foo, delete that. Let's call it foo. This will just be
Gotcha.
like a CSS tag template literal is what it's called. And you can kind of get this nice JS doc as well which tells you how it's going to be used.
That's awesome.
So let's copy the style. And now we actually want to use it, right?
Then import it. Oh, you already did. Cool.
Yep. And that's it. So you can see now this is using Ecstatic.
I like that it has the little balloon.
Yeah, it has the balloons, and you'll notice it kept the original class name as well. So let's go back to the code. This is the code we wrote. We gave it the name foo. Changed it to, I don't know, poop. It says poop, and the scoped one is also added. So this is like a development only thing. The actual styles will only use the hash class name.
Yeah.
But like in the markup, in development only, it gets the name of the original variable because like it'll help you debug and stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was gonna say that's gonna be really, really great for like just tracking down like when a bug happens within your CSS.
Yeah.
This is great. Awesome. Let me see what the comments say. Somebody says CSS worth it. Nope. You're talking to the wrong people. It's worth it to me. Dan said, woo. Someone else said, use the CSS to make everything bigger, then you don't need to zoom. Perduma said, hey, and then highly recommend using Copilot. I imagine that's when we didn't realize that you were missing a comma. And then someone else said it's the same concept as lit elements. Have you used lit elements before? I haven't.
Yeah, lit is a library that makes writing web components easier.
Okay.
And yeah, they also have a similar API where so lit it uses classes instead of functions, right? So you kind of just write class button, and in there you'll do like static styles equals CSS, and then you'll write the same thing. So yeah, it's basically the same thing. The benefit of using just like the same API, like you'll find the CSS in like lots of libraries, is that there are VS Code extensions that will look for this name, and they look for this tag template literal, and they will add syntax highlighting. So like I'm hovering over like there's syntax highlighting here, and also like I'm hovering over the properties, and like I get all the details about them. If I use like a color,
Not you know this from heart with HSL. What?
oh, you messed up. Do this 100%. Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow.
It tells me it's a color.
That's okay. Yeah, that I think this is really great. For me, okay, a lot of people said this is so good. Dan said poop CSS. And they said
Oh,
no.
I forgot. I should change that back probably.
um, Someone said, "Can we use this type of CSS concept in a Vite setup only?"
Yeah, so in the repo, I have links to starter templates for Vite plus Preact, Vite plus React, Vite plus Solid. So yeah, you can kind of find examples there of how to use them in Vite only.
Awesome. Could we see your okay, I'm actually nosy. I should have looked at like the code. I'm curious how you even made this. You said it was only 50 lines of code. Could we see your repo?
Well, it was 50 lines for the proof of concept. Right now it's
Oh,
probably like 1,000 lines. But basically, it's like a Vite plugin. So
okay.
I can kind of show, go on GitHub. Probably zoom in.
Yeah. A ridiculous amount, but and even if you wanted to like make the VS Code windows, yeah.
So it's just a Vite plugin, and Vite uses the same API as like a rollup plugin. So it's um, like pretty. It's a good API. Let me just put it that way. And like, yeah, you just kind of find. So in this transform, you start with finding JSX files, and in there you parse the AST, and then you look for ecstatic imports. So in this case, it's like this thing we imported. And
Mhm.
then you look for these things like the CSS tag template literal, and
Mm.
then you extract the CSS out of it, you put it in a style sheet, you generate like a scoped class name, and then you replace it here. And that's kind of all that you need to do.
Awesome. And then I seen with the class name prefix with the balloon and everything. Oh, wait, that makes a lot of sense to me because I've never
Oh
made
yeah.
a framework or language or anything. I'm always wondering like how people did this. But basically, like you just said, you looked for the specific files, the JSX files. You looked for the ones that had those imports, and then you looked for that template literal so that you can be able to figure out when do you need to oh, what you can do any class. Oh, cool.
Yeah, so you can change the prefix because I don't think everyone wants a balloon in their markup. So maybe you could like scope this with, I don't know, the name of your company or name of your design system or name of your app,
That's
or
awesome.
even just C. I've seen like C for component, I guess.
Okay, I have not seen that. Let's see, what other question
And
oh, go ahead.
there's another option here, marquee mode. I kind of added this as a joke.
Ooh, let me see it. Does it move across the page? What's going on?
Um, oh yeah, this is like a production only optimization. So here it says the final output will contain atomic classes. So
Oh,
it's kind of like Tailwind, where one class maps to one declaration.
okay.
So let me run a build. You'll see it. Maybe it won't work. It's kind of an experimental option. I'll mark
Okay.
it experimental. Um,
When you said marquee, I thought you were talking about, like, back in the day when we had, like, MySpace pages and it was like
you'll see what I mean by marquee. But yeah, this is the output it generated, where instead of like one class containing these three declarations that I wrote here, it'll have like three separate classes.
Oh, that's good.
And like the benefit of that potentially is that like if you have like the same declarations repeated, like 100 components on your page use display flags, they will all share the same class. So
Mm.
the style sheet that can potentially be smaller, and yeah, it's like a trade-off. Like sometimes it can be bigger, sometimes the markup can be like bloated with lots of classes. So I'm sure if I can run this build markup. Yeah, I can do preview. So let's do
Okay.
preview. Crash. So yeah, instead of like just one class, it has 4 classes now in the final markup.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, not what I thought at all. Um,
Well, it's called marquee because like sometimes in DevTools when there's like hundreds of classes, it kind of becomes a marquee. Like you see this part,
Oh,
it'll like scroll.
gotcha. Okay.
I have like so in the PR where I added this, I have a really cool GIF where you can kind of see marquee mode.
Oh, dang. Alright, I see. Let me see what other questions from the audience, if they have anything. Someone said the new syntax, awesome. I would personally use JavaScript in CSS. Okay. I never I don't know if I understand, but cool. I like feel free to
And maybe that's a joke, but like it could also be like so you can interpolate JavaScript inside this string. So let's say you have my brand color is, let's say, hot pink, or it can be like some hex code or HSL value. You could even pull this from an npm library. Doesn't matter.
Mhm.
It's a variable, and you want to kind of use it inside here.
Yeah, you just refer to hot pink. Oh, I mean brand color. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. I don't some of these questions, I'm not sure if they're like relevant. Daniel, I'm not familiar with Civi CRM. Is that something that you know about,
No, I
But
haven't heard
I
of
have to
that.
look it up. Yeah. I don't even know if I pronounced it right, if it's Kivi. I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of things use CSS.
I mean, yeah, CSS is like 1/3 of the web, probably even more. It's like HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Every website is going to use that.
Yeah. From looking at the repo for this, CRM thingy, looks like it uses SAS in some of their repo. It's like a whole organization with multiple repos. So, we're not sure. Um, cool. And let me see what other questions I have for you. Alright. So my next question is like, I know this is like a smaller project, but like what challenges have you encountered as a maintainer? Because I know I like to talk about these type of things because sometimes we're like, oh, become a maintainer, whatever. And like yes, there are positives to it, but there are also negatives. And oftentimes I talk to like projects that have like a bunch of contributors and they talk about like being stressed out and stuff like that. But are there any, like, downsides on your side from maybe this being, like, a smaller project?
Um, well, challenges, I guess. The making this thing from scratch was kind of a challenge because I've never made like a Vite plugin before.
Yeah.
Um, so like I kind of just I was debating if I should even like make it open source, and then I did, and like I saw that people were using it, and that kind of motivated me to keep going. So I made it like more polished, um, handled more edge cases, and even found bugs. So that's something that's really nice about just making things open source. People will use it and they'll find if something is broken and they'll report it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times those can benefit you back. Like you may not have thought of something and like maybe you'll run into it a few months later. And like if someone else ran into it before, you just fix it.
Yeah.
But other times it's like people will find niche uses for your thing or like try to use it in a way it was not intended for.
Mhm.
And then they'll ask about it. Can this be done? And that, like, of course, it can be done. It just requires time and effort, right? And so, yeah, that kind of goes for any open source project. It's like, how much time do you want to put into it? Because, like, if you give it all the time, it will suck up all your time.
Yeah.
Even like a tiny project can suck up a lot of time. And yeah, so one example here is like people wanted well, global styles, which I feel doesn't make sense. Like the entire purpose of this library is to kind of take this and give you back a small string,
Yeah.
Whereas global styles, like they don't need to be scoped, so there's like nothing to give you back. So in my opinion, that should just go in a separate CSS file because that's totally fine. That's what CSS is made for.
for
Like you
global.
don't need to like connect it with markup. It's global, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think that's a good point that you just made is like just because people want a specific feature, it's up to you as the maintainer to like realize like where are your boundaries at? Like, am I going to do this? Does this make sense to me? If someone wanted to make that on their own, they could, but it makes sense of why you said you wouldn't do it because like CSS is already global. You made this to have like scoped styling and
Yeah.
making it easier for that. So you wouldn't be like, all right, yeah, let's do that. It would kind of defeat the purpose of your actual library.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see like you have to evaluate is this actually hurting the project or like if it's like not too hard to add, maybe you'll just add it because like it makes your users happy and like ultimately, if it helps someone, why not help them? So
Mm,
yeah, you kind of just have to evaluate like without that option, is it making someone's life harder?
gotcha. And then someone said it's really cool, but I'm still not super clear why someone would use this over existing CSS frameworks. I I will add a little bit and then you can add some. I don't think we're like showing this in the way of like you got to use this over an existing CSS framework. We're just saying this is an option. And then I'll let you add more. But I'm just never in the business of being like you have to use this one. This one's the best one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I literally don't care if you use it, like use whatever makes sense to you. I
Yeah.
made this because this is something I felt didn't exist before. Um, and maybe the demo didn't show it very well. Like the problem that I was really trying to solve is like when I'm working in an actual project, like the styles are in the Astro components, they're like right next to the markup. Maybe I add a svelte component, it's the same deal. But if I add like a Preact, React, or Solid component, it kind of creates a disconnect where I can't easily convert between them in like static markup. So I wanted a way to have my styles in the same place as the markup and it be fully static, meaning this will all disappear and it will like just turn into a CSS file before it even gets to the user. And from what I found, all the existing solutions, they don't work well, or they require shipping JavaScript to the user. So I guess that's the big sell here. And it, you said CSS frameworks. Maybe you talk about Tailwind. I think Tailwind, if it solves your problem, go for it. I think that makes total sense. This to me is like just a way to write CSS um, until one React adds a way to write CSS in JSX. Like they just need to support writing like style tags. It can be easily done. And two, until CSS itself has a better way of scoping CSS. Because I would like to just use the platform where possible instead of trying to pull in a library where I could have just used the framework or the platform directly.
Yeah. I think yeah, I see the benefit that it's scoped. It's still readable. Your code still like you can see the difference between like the different elements and the components. And then I forgot my last point. My I'm kind of tired. But yeah, I see the benefit on my side. I do want to say hi to Laura as well. Like you're popular. People are a lot of familiar folks are coming through.
Yeah.
Someone asked this question and I don't mind talking about it even though it may not necessarily be about this project. They said is there a formula for code complexity and coding hours needed to keep a program working well? From my side, there's no like set formula. Sometimes you can make a project and then it'll just work and you don't have to do anything, update it. And then sometimes you'll make a project and dependencies break or changes happen or
Yeah.
people there's no formula. But what's your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, same. It's kind of just vibes. Like there's no formula that's gonna give you, is this complex enough? Is this maintainable enough? Just
Yeah.
kind of have to, I guess it also comes from experience. You're gonna be able to, like, the more you work on this stuff, the more easily you'll be able to find out, is adding a feature gonna be like a maintainability issue?
Yeah. It's a that is a good question, but that's the problem of software engineering. Also, Dan said you're a legend.
You're too generous.
Um,
Thank you, though.
so what's been a rewarding part of maintaining this project? I think you tapped into a little bit of like having people realizing people are using the project.
Right. Like 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 I just kind of made this to solve my own problem, and
Yeah.
also just to see if it can be done. Because like I said in the beginning, I was like, how hard can it be? And like I kind of nursed myself into just making it a thing that can be used. And then people started using it, and I was like, wow, I actually made something useful.
Yeah,
And people that like I was friends with, like they hearing from them especially feels nice. Like
that's
they
awesome.
they, they are using your work.
That's awesome. Yeah, I went on it and I was like, oh wow, you have like over 100 stars on it. Like people are really looking at this and using it. Stupid Learner said, I'd really love to use it and maybe even collaborate. So I think that's a good chance for us to quickly talk about like how people can contribute or well, I guess you showed how to get started by installing. You have pretty great instructions on like going ahead and installing the package and then importing it, basically doing what you did in the demo. But how can people contribute if they wanted to collaborate?
Um,
Dan said, I heard there's a website called GitHub that you can. Yes, let's hear about this website.
well, okay, let's go on GitHub. So there's a contributing guide I made specifically because like an open source project is it just becomes better the more people contribute to it. So like I made a contributing guide where you can kind of get this project set up locally, like the development perspective, not from the usage perspective.
Mhm.
And honestly, the biggest thing this project is missing right now is documentation. So I actually have an issue there. Kind of list out all the things that need to be documented, even though it's like a very simple library. There's like a lot of things that can be documented because people are going to have questions about how do I do this? How do I do that? And like to most of those things, the answer is the same way you would do it in CSS, but like it's still like different enough that it makes sense to document them. So like, yeah, so starting from like quick start guide and like syntax highlighting, I actually didn't even mention, but like you kind of need this style components VS Code extension to be able to get syntax highlighting and IntelliSense. So things like that can be documented.
Oh,
And maybe someone wants to use a post CSS plugin. So you're gonna need to add that in your read config or astro config. And yeah, just stuff like that needs to be documented.
awesome.
Another thing is testing.
Oh yeah.
I have another issue for that. And someone was looking into this, which I found really interesting. It was like, I made this issue very early, like when no one was using this project. And then 2 days later, someone was like, I try adding tests. And they really like surprised me. Like, wow.
That's so
Um,
exciting.
yeah. So yeah, those are the two big things. And then maybe you start using it and you find something is missing. So you can like start by contributing an issue. Like I think even that is quite useful. You don't always have to contribute code.
I love it. Yes. Okay, first, Dan said, "Why didn't you tell me you were looking for docs?" And then Stubborn Learner said, "Can I try my hand at that?" I will totally encourage anybody who's
Yeah, go
watching this.
ahead.
Yeah. especially because you have that issue. I'm sure it could be broken up into different issues. And I saw one that said like why aesthetic and then why not aesthetic. That's like an easy, that's low hanging fruit for someone to write some documentation on if they're still new. Some I think Oh, okay. I guess this is a conversation between somebody named Chris saying what's the difference between the CSX function provided in emotion style.
Good question.
Yeah.
So it's the same API as emotion, so you can literally replace this with emotion/CSS once you have it installed, and this code will like from the surface level at least, it will work exactly the same. The difference there is emotion will ship JavaScript to the client, so it's like some 8 to 10 kilobytes of JavaScript, and this code that you write will also be shipped in your JavaScript bundle. So you can imagine like if you have like hundreds of components, all of this will be in your JavaScript bundle, and emotion will like need to process that at runtime in the browser and like convert that into classes and generate style sheets all in the browser. Whereas Ecstatic is like taking this and generating a CSS file right when you run npm build. So when you run this literally happens, and you can kind of see the CSS file right here.
Perfect.
And it kind of gets stripped out, and the only thing that remains is the class name. I have like a nice visualization at my blog. I should probably add that somewhere in the docs as well. So you start with this code, and then when Ecstatic, let me zoom in because someone complained.
You already know.
So you start with this code, and then when Ecstatic runs, it will. This is supposed to be a GIF. Okay, it's not loading. Maybe it doesn't load in. So I'm using Hashnode for my blog. I'll probably have to look into that. But this is supposed to be a GIF showing an animation where this code disappears and turns into a short string with just a class name.
Cool. I will also encourage y'all to check out the blog post that they wrote. Really, really good. I linked it below, or I showed the link below, but basically it's titled "Is CSS and JS Actually Bad?" And I think it's really insightful. And I think Bruce was adding maybe more to Chris's question. I hope I'm not wrong, but they said the uses of class and JSS like applying regular CSS to an element. Maybe not. I'm not sure. And then they said that's the key difference. Okay, yeah, I think that's what they're responding to. So they were just adding thoughts.
I mean, like I said, there's. I think I know what they're saying now. So there's two ways to use emotion. They can use emotion/CSS, which is basically like Ecstatic except at a runtime. But there's also emotion/React, which gives you a CSS prop, which is like completely different. Like you can write CSS properties as objects, which is what I was talking about earlier, where you can kind of do. So if you wanted to do font inherit, you would do like font and then inherit like that.
Gotcha. Cool. Awesome. We're nearing the end. We're at like 50 minutes. My other question to you is, do you have any advice for folks who want to get started on building their own open source projects or libraries? It does seem like an overwhelming task for some folks. So do you have any thoughts on?
Yeah. So I would say start with something small.
Yeah.
So before I made this library, I made a bunch of other things. One of the things is I made open props SCSS.
Mhm.
So if you've heard of open props, it is a set of CSS variables basically, where you can kind of get like all these colors and then like shadows typography, size variables, media queries, all that kind of thing. But like it's all CSS variables, but I like using Sass. So I wanted like a Sass version of this. So I just made this tiny library. Literally all it does is take the CSS variables and convert them into Sass variables. So like it's literally one file. That's the whole project.
Okay.
And like I made this for myself. So that's another thing you should think of, like solve a problem for yourself. But then you'll find is that people have the same problem and they'll start using your thing. And yeah, like another one of my friends reached out to me and they were like, wow, you made this. This is actually useful for me.
That's
Literally just this one giant SCSS file. It's the tiniest project, but like it was useful for me and it was useful for a friend. So yeah, start with something small. Start with something that solves your problem.
awesome. Okay. Those are really great. That's really great advice for anyone looking to start a project. Start small and start with something that solves your problem. You'll find that it helps other people as well. I honestly think I'm hoping after the stream you get a lot of help with docs because we already have Dan in here. Stupid Learner said they're interested. I know Laura is great at docs as well. And then Bruce said, let me know if you want some help with docs. That's kind of
That's
their
awesome.
thing. Like, yeah, go to the repo, check it out. I know Chris said, and you can access any theme in your CSS function. I think referring to Ecsstatic. I think the answer is yes, right?
Okay, this is a kind of a loaded question. So I found that CSS and JS libraries, they provide you ways to do your own theming.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have a way for you to define different themes.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this is like minimal by design. So to do theming in Ecstatic, you would do it the same way you would do it in plain CSS. And the way I do it is I would just make like theme.css. And in here, I would find like CSS variables. So like BG, let's start with light theme first. And then text will be black. And then you kind of define all your CSS variables here, all the colors you could possibly need for a light theme. And then you do the same for dark theme.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be like prefers color scheme dark. So be BG black. That's white. And you can also do the same for selectors. So I like to add a data theme attribute changes those variables.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, but when you just define these variables like this, you don't need to worry about theming at a component level. You can kind of just use these variables in the component like normal. The component doesn't even care about the theme. All it cares is like what's the name of the variable.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Cool. We have a lot of Copilot questions or thoughts. Someone said, "Do you ever use AI to solve your coding issues?" I do, but I think maybe you use tab 9 or okay, no, you don't use tab 9.
No, I don't really care
Okay.
for AI much.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna switch into the non-technical questions. They're gonna be like a little bit faster. First question is, what was your first programming language that you ever learned?
I want to say C++, but then I didn't know what I was doing. So then I learned Scratch. Scratch is like this visual
The things that go
language.
together, right? They're like they look like puzzles.
Yeah, it's from MIT.
Yeah.
And it kind of really clicked for me. Is there a way to show what the syntax looks like? See inside. Okay, there you go. It's so cool. You just kind of move blocks around and you can't hear it over screen share, but like there's audio as where this rain is falling.
How old were you when
And,
you were using Scratch? Oh, this
probably like 12, 13.
okay, I see.
And yeah, I think I learned Scratch and then I learned C. So I would say C was probably my first like proper programming language.
Nice. I love. Oh, and Dan said he learned Scratch when he was 9. That's awesome. I see y'all. I didn't. My first language was not. I guess not really a language. It was SQL. I didn't really know. I was like, I want to learn to code, and I was like, this doesn't seem like coding. I'm not sure how it applies to websites. But if you ever need me to write a SQL query, I got you. Um, if money wasn't an issue, how would you ideally spend your time? Whether it's like job wise or not job wise, what would be like your dream to just be?
Touch grass. I don't know. I feel like if money wasn't a problem, I would kind of do something that is not as stressful, that is like that really brings me joy.
Yeah.
And music brings me joy, so I probably play lots of guitar. Right now, I find that I don't have the time to do that.
I get you. Yeah, that's what I was like. I was like, if we had all the money in the world, we will have all the time to do whatever we want. Someone said their first language was Python. That's awesome. Someone said I didn't have proper internet till I was 13. Yeah, I could relate with you. I don't think I so I had internet when I was 10 and then it went away until I was like maybe 15, 16 years old. So I was just on the computer like playing pinball. Um, so, um, what's a dream open source project that you would like to create one day? Um,
Um, if I had like all the time in the world to
yeah,
just work on open source, I think I would like um, there's some ambitious ideas there, but I think I would start with like a accessible component library that is framework agnostic. I feel like one doesn't exist right now,
yeah,
and like it's kind of the reason I use React. Like I'm not a fan of React, but I use it because there's like so many like the ecosystem is huge. A lot of the problems are solved already. There's like 5 different accessibility focused component libraries. Um, so yeah, I would start there, and then I would also like to solve CSS problems. Like there's like so much to be solved there, and creating a framework probably will be like a dream project if we're like really dreaming. I feel like there's problems with a lot of the frameworks right now,
yeah.
but like I'm not qualified enough for that.
No, don't say that. You definitely are. But I mean, and a lot of people that made their own frameworks, they had other contributors like to
Yeah,
help them.
but when you start making it, you realize that there's only so much you can do, and like you start hitting the limits, and then someone else is like, this has limits, so let me make my own thing,
Yeah.
and then that will have limits, so someone else will come and do the same.
Gotcha. I really liked your accessible components idea. That's really good. I love that. Dan said Astro is perfect and there's no way to improve it. I love the it's
Yeah,
pretty
see,
good.
I want to be able to use, I guess, framework. So I want not just frameworks, but I want a way to write components that is framework agnostic. Right
Yeah,
now, you kind of can't use Astro outside Astro, if that makes sense,
that makes sense. Yeah.
which is kind of an impossible ask now that I say it out loud.
Someone said I would download HTML tutorials and go through them offline. That's how I learned HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Awesome. Glad that that's the because you didn't have internet, right? That's awesome. Wow.
It's kind of wild how we take internet for granted these days.
Yeah.
We're like 10, 15 years ago, it was like not a thing everyone had.
Yeah. Wow. And then even still, like some areas don't have like the strongest internet. Okay. I think you might hate this question. You can only eat one food again for the rest of your life. What is it?
Um, Probably something like chicken shawarma or gyro.
Okay. I thought you were gonna hate this question way more from our past conversations around food. Um,
No, you always ask safe foods, and like chicken is one of my safe foods.
Dan really wants me to ask you the Beyonce question. It's coming.
Um,
um,
so I actually don't listen to a lot of Beyonce, but just just for Dan, I'm gonna say Halo.
That's a good one. I thought you were gonna pick like single ladies. Like, okay, you can tell people don't listen to Beyonce much if they're like, this song. Like, okay. That was a good choice. So, all right. Well, so we reached the end of the stream or all the questions that I had. Thank you so much to people. Dan said, "Bring me back on the show. We just do Beyonce karaoke." Okay, I'm down. That would be great.
That would be a good one for your personal channel.
Yeah, I don't think GitHub would like it, but my personal channel, yes, GitHub will be like, "What is this?" But I want to wrap up by highlighting some of the links that we showed so far. One is, I just took it off. Ecstatic.dev. That's the project's website. If you wanted to check it out and learn more, I know that you have some documentation on there and like how to use it and all that. If you want to contribute, and I should have already had this pulled up. If you want to contribute, especially to the documentation, it seemed like a lot of people were really excited about that. You want to go ahead to github.com/mayock99/ecstatic and go through the issue that it says document all the things. Probably pick one of the bullet points there. That way you don't get too overwhelmed. But I think this is a really, really good list of things that people can easily contribute to. And then also check out this blog post. I think it's really great. I think the whole entire blog itself is great. Blog.mayock.co is CSS and JS really is actually bad. So is there any last things you wanted to add before we leave?
I don't know. Make cool things, make fun things, and make accessible things.
Nice. Yeah, that's an awesome way to end. All right, y'all. Make cool things, make accessible things. I wanna say contribute to projects by just using them. Let's like if you're feeling overwhelmed and nervous about actually making a contribution, one of the best, easiest ways and something that like is really valuable to maintainers is just start using it. Like they mentioned, it helps make the experience more rewarding and then also help them to find bugs that they didn't know existed. Thank you again, y'all, for tuning in. I really appreciated meeting new people and then seeing familiar faces as well. And I'll see you all next Friday.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for hopping on. I really appreciated your time. Bye, y'all.